Okay, I've been thinking about doing this video for the last couple weeks here, and what kind of spurred me to do it is Kaz did a video here called You Do You, Kaz at Fourth Dimension, and he talked about a training event being done by 3%ers in Ohio. Well, I got a feeling I know what event he's talking about. I know the 3% security force unit up in that state had been talking about what was quote-unquote called a multi-state field training exercise, or FTX. And I and other members from my state used to laugh our rear ends off when we hear this being brought up and when they were pushing it, because they seem to put more emphasis on where to park RVs and campers than they did for what they were actually going to do at the event. So it sounded like they're camping out, they're having their little bonfires each evening where they're getting drunk off their rear ends, they're barbecuing and all that stuff, and oh yeah, there's firearms present as they're getting drunk. So what should a militia unit look for or plan for doing training? Because I know there are militias out there without a single veteran in, so they don't really know how to do this. Not really sure how to go about it. I have some notes written up on this here. Now, first off, ideally your unit should meet at least one time per month, preferably for a full weekend, a Saturday and Sunday. Otherwise, meet for one day, a minimum of 4 hours. If that's the way you go with those mini like that, only 4 hours, try to do a couple meetings a month so that you get more time in for your training. Training is something that cannot be overlooked. It's extremely important. Now, as you're doing the training, you need to think of it as kind of a training cycle of 3 months, 4 months, or 6 months. So you have 2 to 5 months where you're training on stuff, which can be ranges and all that stuff in classes, and then you had that little cumulative at a field exercise, a field training exercise, where you're taking all that stuff you learned since the previous FTX and you're testing your retention of the knowledge. Can you do it? Do you remember it? Now, really a recommendation, the militia unit, especially larger ones, need to have a training meeting before you have your big training event. Not just FTXs, just even your 4-hour events. Have a meeting a week, 2 weeks before, where the leaders and the core members get together. Now, at those meetings, you're going to talk about plans for future training events, maybe potential combat operations. You're talking over operations of the unit, how things are going. Maybe at these meetings, that's the time that you're going to set up new caches, maybe inspect out ones that are already in the ground. That's a good time for you to do the leaders' recons, for you to check out a new area for training to see if it's going to work for the upcoming event, or do you need to shift to another location. So have a couple locations you're going to check out just in case. It's also a good time for doing those recons for combat operations. And something that you might want to think about doing is wargaming. Actually sitting down, setting up a terrain model. You know, even if you're just bringing in the plastic toy soldiers and stuff, you're walking through the situation. You're setting up, okay, this is a squad, this is a platoon, we got the right number of troops on the board here, we got the whatever vehicles and that stuff, and we're moving through this area and we get engaged this way. How should we handle it things? War game it out. Doing that during those leaders meetings will be invaluable training for your headquarters section for when things go hot, for during a conflict. Now I have some stuff here written up. A training schedule for a 2-day weekend. Typically, you're going to start about 0900 hours, go to 1700 hours. So 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You could go longer, you could go less. You could start earlier, you could end later. It's up to you. This is just a recommendation. Now, never forget PT, physical training. That is something that is seriously overlooked in the militia, and there is a hell of a lot of fatties. You need to be working out. You need to be doing combat-related PT. Now, so I have in the schedule here, from 0900 to 1000 hours, PT. The first thing you do right after you show up. Do that for about an hour. It's what you do in the military. You do it every damn day. Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, you do it on your own. Then from 1000 hours to 1300 hours, you have your classes. Do your chow break from 1300 hours to 1330 hours. Then you come right back in for doing classes from 1330 to either 1630 or 1700 hours. If it's a Saturday, you do your classes till 1700. From 1630 to 1700 hours on Sunday, you have your AAR and final instructions. Your AAR is your after action review. How did things go for the weekend? Did training go the way it was supposed to? You know, what went right, what went wrong, how can you improve? And what we always did in the military, if you gave an idea on or complained about something, you needed to give an idea on how to improve. That cuts down on people nitpicking and complaining just because they have a bad attitude. Your final instructions is basically where you're going to train next month, what's it going to generally cover, and what are you planning for maybe 2 months out, so that people have a idea if they need to take off from work, especially if it's a field exercise. Now for PT, ideas I have on this. Think of runs up to 3 miles in length. Your standard push-ups and sit-ups and other similar type strengthening exercises. Don't forget to stretch out. Don't forget your rotations. If you forget that stuff before you start exercising, people are going to get injured. They're going to miss work, and they're not going to be as effective during training. Something that could be useful, could be done, is quote-unquote weight training. Using sandbags, using full ammo cans, using full ammo crates. Another thing is log PT. Sucks, but guess what? It works. It builds team spirit, and it also builds up strength. Something we used to do on active duty once in a while, PT with body armor. No ammo or extra weight on the body armor. Just the body armor is bad enough. Going out doing your run wearing your body armor, do your exercises with body armor. Maybe playing sports with body armor. Trust me, it sucks. Try doing basketball or football wearing body armor. Another thing you could have in there is your hand-to-hand combat, your combatives. That's a good time when to conduct that classes during your PT hour. And everyone's favorite, especially for basic trainees, rifle PT. Trust me, it sucks and it works. It works pretty goddamn good. And then you can put in there too bayonet training. That's a good time that you can do it, especially doing your little assault course and stuff, if you plan on doing that. Now, along with that, make sure that people are training on their own between the meetings. They're getting out at least once a week, preferably every day, or at least 6 days a week, going out and exercising. They don't have to go to a gym. They can exercise at home. You can do push-ups and sit-ups at home. You can go for a run near your house. You know, you can toss a rucksack on your back, put miles on your feet, whatever. Do not neglect your physical training, especially you fatties. Now for the classes, ideas on these I have is first aid, Wilderness survival, which would cover your shelters, fire startings, and so forth. Wild edibles classes, along with fishing and trapping. So you're learning how to put in trot lines. You're learning how to make homemade fishing poles. Maybe ice fishing stuff. You're learning how to trap small game in that. How to track it and hunt small game and potentially bigger game. Probably the size of your deer and elk at most. You should have some basic weapons classes on how to properly handle the weapon, how to maintain your weapon. And you could include in there classes for reloading ammunition. Not just reloading your weapon, your tactical reloads, but how to reload your ammo. Communications classes covering radios, field telephones, and any other means of communications that you use as a unit. It could be hand and arm signals, could be signal flags, could be blinky lights, whatever you come up with. Classes on fighting positions, especially your hasties that you may do for ambushes. You may dig in a hasty for an ambush. Maybe you're finding a location on the ground that will work as a good hasty position for doing an ambush. Learn the difference between cover and concealment. I really should not have to explain that one. Patrolling. How to move as a team. What's everyone's job? Where they're supposed to be in different formations. Also your hand and arm signals. You're out there moving and you're incorporating those hand and arm signals. And also as part of that, your contact drills. Near ambush, far ambush, snipers, indirect fires, your mortars. React to mine strikes. Someone's stepping on a mine, someone's setting off a booby trap. Include that stuff in there. Land navigation classes by paper maps. No GPS allowed, period. Learn how to use paper map, because paper map cannot be detected by the enemy, where GPS, at least the systems you can get a hold of as a civilian, guess what? They're all active. They can be tracked. You're giving the enemy a pretty good beacon telling them where the hell you're at, so where they need to drop the ordnance on top of you to wipe you out. So learn how to use that paper map. Learn how to use that compass. Learn how to determine direction without a compass, at night and during the day. Prepping skills, such as canning, dehydrating, how to make hardtack, jerky, and so forth, how to garden, how to maintain your plants, and also your job-specific tasks, such as engineer, such as decamo specialist, your armor, your infantry specialist, your mechanics. That's just some ideas for classes. Now, I recommend that each month you have a particular emphasis or area. Maybe you're going to go by a scenario for each month. And the classes you cover during that month is related to that scenario. But try to break it up. Try to cover multiple different subject areas each month. Don't just concentrate on one particular area. Train on multiple, which will then lead into your field training exercise, which is your cumulative of all training since the last field training exercise. Now guess what? Don't forget PT during this either. This is a great time to do ruck marches. Rucking up, humping your way into the area where you're doing the exercise. Parking your vehicles at one location where they can be watched. You have everything on your back, on your game cart, bringing it in with you, humping it in. Now, that would include also forced marches, where you're marching at a fast pace. You're trying to wear yourself out, you're pushing your body. That will come in handy later on in combat, later on when conflict begins. Another thing that you can do for PT during FTXs is your water safety and boat training. Training on staying afloat. Training on how to right a boat that's been overturned, how to get in a boat, how to get out of a boat, how to get in and out of a boat without being close to land. Having to move in, slogging your way in, especially with gear, to the shore after getting dropped off on the edge of the lake, on the edge of the river, and so forth. Another thing that can be used as part of your PT is bunker construction. This is a good time for doing those permanent fortifications before a conflict that could be used during a conflict. So you're moving around heavy logs, you're moving around concrete blocks, you're moving around sandbags, you're moving around large amounts of dirt using a shovel and a pick. Now in your FTXs, don't forget to include patrols at daytime and at nighttime. Nighttime sucks for doing patrols. Trust me on this. It's a major pain in the butt. And it's something you need to be practicing now, because you ain't going to get it right in combat if you did not practice it beforehand. Don't forget to do guard duty at night. People need to learn how to stay awake, and you're only staying up for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Condition your body to be able to do it. A good thing to have inside your field training exercises is a little force on force. It could be someone out there who goes off to do whatever or hasn't come in for the exercise yet. He plays sniper. He has blanks. And he fires off a few rounds and that stuff to get everyone spooked and react accordingly. Now, for field training exercises, you want to start earlier than your normal training meetings typically. So maybe you're reporting at 6 a.m., 06, or at 07. Or maybe you're coming in the night before. Say you're reporting by 2000 hours, 8 p.m. Maybe you're having your advanced party reporting in the night before. They're moving in, securing the area, they're doing their quartering party drills, and then the next morning, the rest of the unit moves in, and you start getting them set up the same way you would in combat with your quartering party. And you should leave probably, if you're used to finishing your meetings at 1700, 5 p.m. on Sunday, maybe that's when you should end your field exercise. If you humped it in with your rucksack, maybe you're going to hump it out, but I doubt you will. You're going to be pretty tired. So arrange for transport with your militia auxiliary to move you from the field site to where the vehicles are so that you can mount up, get your stuff put away, and head back home for work the next day. So hopefully that gives you some good ideas on how to conduct unit training. So ideally you should have 2 meetings a month, one of them being a leaders meeting, one of them being a actual training meeting for the full unit. Now, if you have new people, especially a lot of new people, and you don't want them to see something important at that training meeting, maybe do a little separate one. Have that 3rd meeting each month where it's core members and volunteers. You bring in those prospects, those new recruits. You're doing a little mini training with them. And consider that kind of like basic training. So you're going to cover your basic tasks. So you're probably not going to cover your patrolling and all that stuff, but you're giving them some of the basics. You're covering first aid. You're teaching them how to talk on a radio, how to use a radio. And it may not be the actual radio used by your unit. It could be just some general little cheapy thing that you have. Just some general radio. Teach them how to use it. Teach them the importance of limiting the time of their communications, of using the correct terminology, how to talk on the radio, period, how to contact someone, get a response back, and then send out the message, get the confirmation, and then end the conversation on the radio. All those basic little things. That's a real good thing also to cover the basics on weapons. Identifying the parts, how to clean their weapons. You'd be surprised the number of people, even in militia, that do not know how to clean their goddamn weapon. I've seen some pretty filthy freaking weapons in the militia. And the reason they're filthy is because the person who has it doesn't clean their damn weapon. And it might be because they never learned how. They're used to taking it to the gun store, turning it over to the gunsmith, having them clean it for them every few months. No, learn how to clean your own damn weapon. You ain't going to be dropping it off at a gun store during a conflict. You're going to have to do it yourself, so this is a great time to learn it. Now, if anyone else has any recommendations or suggestions, go ahead and put them in the comments. And don't get stupid. If you get really stupid, I'll at a minimum take off your comment. I might ban you. So, now for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot Militia movements, always remember, essayons.